Hello, ladies and gentlemen, plant lovers from all around the world, hopefully from the Netherlands also, and from everywhere. Welcome back. This is the very first episode of the Calathea Jungle podcast. I'm super excited. It's been a long time in the making. I actually recorded this interview you're about to hear in May, so it definitely has been a long time in the making. And I can only thank our guest right now who's going to come on, Lisa, for taking the time to talk to me. We actually talked for about 2 hours, um, a bit off camera as or off audio as well, but we did. This episode is quite long, so get yourself some snacks, some drinks you can drink and listen. No one's judging you here. And buckle in because you're in for a ride. She knows Lisa is a plant biology student in the Netherlands. She's in her third year. She's probably going now on her fourth year already because school's starting soon. She has over 300 plants, but I'm not going to spoil anything. Let Lisa talk to you. If you want to find Lisa, her Instagram handle is a bit in Dutch, so it's Groene Gooisels. I don't know how to pronounce it. Sorry, Lisa. I'm going to tag it in the description, so please go follow Lisa and show her all the love. She definitely is one of the most knowledgeable persons when it comes to cacti. If you have issues with your cacti, send her a picture. She is always willing to help. She's lovely. Thank you, Lisa, and enjoy the episode. So, Lisa, welcome to the very first episode of the Calathea Jungle podcast. I'm really happy to have you here today to be teaching everyone about cacti because I know from talking to you now and before that you love cacti. I can really see it on your Instagram and I can really feel it when you talk about them.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So, could you tell us more about yourself, your plants, your love of cacti?
Well, let's start at the start. I am Lisa. I am 21 years old and I live in the Netherlands. I am studying in Wageningen at the university, and my study is actually plant sciences. So I am in my third year. So for 3 long years, I have been all about plants, and I took that home as well. I have about 300 houseplants, and at my parents' place, I have another 50 houseplants, and most of them are succulents and cacti. They fascinate me the most. They are true survivors, and they're quite charming in their own ways. I actually also love the most common houseplants, the hyped houseplants like philodendrons and monstera and that kind of plants. I like them, but I love cacti. So it's quite a difference. But I do actually have other plants than cacti. I have a lot of herbs on my balcony, and I have a few ferns and philodendrons and hoyas and that kind of plants in my room, which is quite the humidity is quite high because my tree fern will not survive if it is not. But when I go into my main room, the windowsill is full with cacti. It's loaded with cacti. There's not one square centimeter empty. It's all cacti.
That's impressive. That's very impressive. Do they also teach you about cacti in plant biology?
No, not at all. You have a few types of photosynthesis, um, and it's three types actually. One type is which is most common in the most trees and the most leaf plants. It's the C3 type of photosynthesis. Next up, you have the C4 type of photosynthesis. A lot of grasses use this, and also a lot of tropical plants that will not survive if with less water. So they adapted to actually a kind of system in which they spare water, but still have a quite high photosynthesis rate, so they can grow. And next up, there's even a more extreme environment, and that is for the CAM plants. And that's, for instance, succulents and cacti and bromeliads and that kind of plants. They spare water very aggressively. They close whatever they have, they seal their water inside. But their photosynthesis rates are quite low, which means they're quite interesting to look at. Their photosynthesis is so different from the crop plants we get to know, but that's the only part in my entire studies I learned something about succulents.
Oh,
Just
that's
because they have such a sparely relation to water, and their photosynthesis is very different from, for instance, the potato crop. So no, I have actually not had a single thing about cacti. Sometimes I do learn about orchids because they are kind of the model plant for CAM photosynthesis, the succulent photosynthesis. But no, cacti are not a common used crop. They are not cacti you really can eat except from dragon fruit and some other opuntii. So no, cacti are not that interesting for my study, unfortunately.
oh, that's sad for you who love them so much.
Yes, well, but what I actually can do is take the knowledge I learned from different courses about, for example, the hormonal pathways in plants, the way how they grow, the way how roots like to get into the soil. I can use that for my cacti and for my other plants. So I actually can bring home the knowledge and use that on my plants, but I do not have anything on my plants in particular. Cacti do not exist in the scientific world.
Wow, that's sad actually.
It's
So
so sad.
it's really good that you can then use what you learned in plant biology and apply them to your own plants. That's probably why you have 300 plus plants.
Yeah, well, it gets me so excited because I look at them like any plant lover does. Oh, it's making new growth. Oh, it's blooming. But I can also look at it. Huh, it has a yellow spot. This can originate from blah 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 blah. For instance, nutrient deficiency or so. But I also can look at the way the root grows and appreciate the pattern I see because I have learned about that. So I look at them from my professional way of view, and I also look at them at my just hobbyist point of view. So yeah, that's quite a nice combination actually.
I love that. I love that you can actually apply it to your everyday life. So what are some of the your favorite types of cacti?
Well, um, back in the days, my mom was always telling me about this one malaria she had at her room when she was a little girl, and it flowered. And one day she overwatered it, and she was so sad she even cried. So
Oh,
it was so sad. And from that perspective, I bought some malaria. At least I thought it was malaria. They turned out to be Rebutia, which is a quite it's a heavy blooming cacti species. So the flowers are enormous. The cacti are quite small, and well, the flowers are beautiful. They're colorful. They're huge. The shape is pretty. So I think Rebutia are one of my favorite cacti. Besides that, the Astrophytum cacti, they are like star shaped.
yeah.
Astro means star, Phytum means looks like in Latin, or in Greek. I actually don't know. I have had both courses in high school, but I don't know which language I'm translating from.
I think
Um,
plant is more Latin.
yeah, well, some are Greek as well,
Oh,
but
really?
I'm not sure anymore. Too bad, too bad. Um, but I like those as well because they're growing so slowly and they can be huge. The plants can turn over 100 years old, and they're still pretty. So yeah, I think Ripiccia and Astrophytums are my favorite cacti.
Very good. I also have some astrophytum. I love them as well. They're very pretty.
They're,
So maybe we can talk about people who are keeping cacti and are struggling. I know I have a constant mealybug problem with my cacti, which I have to be on top of all the time. But
oh, me
maybe,
too.
yeah, it's bad. So what are some of the first signs someone would see if they're doing something wrong?
Well, let's start off with the mealy bug problem. I have it all the time. Um, my boyfriend actually makes jokes about it that when I walk across my window and I start yelling, I will probably have seen a mealybug somewhere. Um, well, I actually have so many cacti in one place. Well, if I were a mealybug, I would be very happy to be in my own windowsill. Yeah, well, what I also have learned from my studies is when you have a ton of the same plants besides each other, it's perfect for pests to spread. It's called a problem of the monoculture. Monoculture means one plant on a huge scale. Well, I actually see my own windowsill as a monoculture as well. I have so many plants that normally would not um, be together in this scale. You would in nature not have this many different types of cacti beside each other. Um, so I consider my windowsill actually as a monoculture. So that is it is optimal for pests to spread. And it is, yeah, while mealybugs are very mean, I dislike them so much because they're very small. And because they're very small, they fit everywhere on your plant. And that's even meaner because they just suck the sap your plant is producing out of it, and it creates scars on the outer tissue of the plant. But because they're small and quite smart, they go at the weaker points of the plant. So either the growing point or at the downside of the plant. So those are 2 points you won't notice them when they start, well, invading your plants. So yeah, checking and checking and checking over and over again.
Yeah.
And well, when I actually find them, I first start yelling. I don't think that contributes to getting them away, but it is actually part of the plan. Start yelling. Next up, remove all the visible mealybugs with a Q-tape or just a tiny needle or something. At least kill them. Just kill them. In any way, kill them. Um, and after that, I take some soap from my kitchen, and when it's very badly, I just pour over the soap and remove it a few days after. But when I just found a few, like under 5, I dilute the soap into. It's still quite. It's not very runny yet, but it is. Well, you can drip it onto your plant and let that sit for a few days. So the surface of the plant will become not as sticky as the bugs want to. The bugs want to put their suck needle into your plant and eat. But when there's soap on the surface, they cannot attach to the plant anymore. Plus, they have a protective shield, which is made up from some kind of fatty material. But that will disappear as well, so they will be naked and they will dry out. Sounds quite brutal, but it's very nice
Hmm.
because you're protecting your plants.
Better than my approach. I use alcohol to spray them with, and yeah,
That works
and
as well.
and killing them. But I'm going to have to try this approach here.
Well, alcohol works as well because it does the same as soap. It dries out both the animal and the surface they want to attach to. But my problem with alcohol is when it touches your soil, some bacteria and fungi on your soil can actually use the alcohol as food.
Oh,
So from alcohol, if the alcohol is perfectly fine if it just is on the plant, but as soon as the alcohol gets into the soil, it can get very smelly because micro life is using it as food.
oh,
So
that's a good tip.
when it's on the plant itself, it's fine. But with alcohol, it's also if the sun is shining on the surface of the plant and there's alcohol, the plant can burn. This is actually the case with soap as well. If you have soap on the surface and there is a bright sun on your plant, it can burn. So with my heavy soap method, I rinse the plant after a few days, about 3 or 4 days, because well, cacti use a fatty substance at the surface to prevent the water inside the plant to escape. So if they have a fatty layer, a fatty coat on top of it, the water will stay inside. And if you use the soap for too long or too heavy soap, that can disappear as well. Your cacti will not be as bright, as shiny anymore. It will become matte and a bit sad.
Oh
So
no.
that's not what you want actually. So remove the soap as well. And keep checking though. If you have mealybugs, the mealybug babies can appear within 14 days. And they also can be in your soil, and it's very nasty. If you have had mealybugs and your plant is not growing and being sad, and you're actually doing everything perfectly fine, I would recommend sometimes to check the roots because mealybugs can also be underground and eating your roots. I, that's not very common, but it can happen actually.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that recently on Instagram. Someone had it. I was like, oh, I didn't know this could happen. But how do you say? I heard some people often repot if they see a mealy bug to get rid of the eggs. Would you recommend that, or do you not do that?
Well, I personally do not do that because um, I have such an intense bond with my plants. And with that, I mean, I check them nearly every day. And most of the time, when I'm cooking and something is cooling off or being in the oven, I think, oh, let's check all of my plants. So, or when I'm just busy, or when I'm procrastinating for my studies, that kind of stuff. So I check my plants so very often that when I have an outbreak, it must be at the top of the plant. Um, I have repotted all of my cacti this spring, and actually at only 3 out of all of my plants, I found a little bit of mealybug in the soil. So for I personally do not do that, but if you find a plant which with a really big uh, outbreak of mealybug, I can recommend it. But
Okay.
also, if you repot the plant, you're giving the plant new energy to fight against the mealybug. Let's say it like that. So it might be nice actually.
Hmm. Very good tips. What are some of the other common things you see as pests and problems that happen with cacti?
Well, actually, the biggest pest or problem with cacti is rotting. And I can say I can care perfectly for my cacti. I have so many blooming cacti, and some are growing as like crazy. But even I have rotting cacti as well, and I see some other um, well, actually, people that have had cacti for about 30 years, the old collecting cacti guys, and even they do not have perfect mechanisms to cope with rot. Cacti are very, very fragile when it's about roots. Imagine in their habitat, they're just sitting between rocks and they are very lucky if they have water once in a half year. Well, for some species, other species have once a month, for instance. But they have developed such mechanisms that they can cope with the drought. So if you put them in in a tiny box, their roots cannot behave as they would in full soil. So that is actually it creates a problem that is not there in nature. So in a pot, I use plastic pots. I also use glass, but that's very uncommon. I have some cacti in glass pots so I can see the root system develop. It's only for a certain group of plants of mine, not a certain species, but plants that will not grow as I expect them to. I put them in glass pots so I can see the root development. But in both in glass as in plastic pots, the water stays in the pot more than it would in a natural soil. In my studies, I also learn about soil types. You have, for instance, a very clayey soil in the Netherlands with a lot of very tiny pieces packed together. So that's a very firm soil. Well, when you go to the desert where cacti live, they actually have they have big stones, they have hard sand, they have a very loose, airy soil. And if you put water on that, the water will be gone in no time. I have created such a soil myself actually with a lot of sand. So when I'm watering it, there will never be well the soil takes up the water very well, but it will also will release it very quickly. Um, and if you have an open soil, the water will run through in no time. So well, even if it is very wet at one time, it can be quite dry the day after. And cacti roots are made to be dry actually. So if you have cacti roots that are kept wet because there's too much organic soil, or the pot is a closed system, they might rot because, like other plants, cacti roots cannot be surrounded by water that much. Um, well, let's say other roots have mechanisms to cope with fungi, to keep the fungi outside, but they also have bonds with other fungi that protect them from getting infected. But cacti do not have any need in nature to have such mechanisms, right? So when you put them in a pot, they are in such a different circumstances that they have to be adapted to that, and you are the one that has to adapt to that situation actually by sparingly giving the water. But well, I even have some plants that died in the winter from rotting. That's actually called dry rot because in the winter I do not give them one single drop of water. It's very relaxing though. I just can stare at them and forgetting about them for 2 months, for 3 months, for some species even longer. But yeah, even when they're dry, they can rot. Cacti are because well, they're in a very hot, dry area back home. So originally, they have not made any mechanisms to cope with fungi. So that's the weakness of cactuses. Because in quite wet areas like the Netherlands, well, it's quite wet here. The air can be very well, the humidity of the air can be very high, but because it's not that hot, water will not disappear as easily. So rotting is even for me quite dangerous.
What's the difference between rot and hardening of the skin? Because sometimes they like harden over. You see
Mm-hmm.
that a lot in nature as well. Like they get really hard underneath and look like some sort of tree, and then on top they're still succulent.
Uh-huh.
What's the difference between two of those?
Well, it is called hardening. So if you poke it, it will be stiff. It will be super stiff. Well, cacti can have spines underneath the cacti, the cactus, so you cannot reach it. So when I'm trying to see whether it's hardening or what, I take, for instance, a pencil and poke the cactus. Well, if it's hard, no problem. The cactus is just a ball of water, and water is quite heavy. So if you are a very big cactus, um, even though you are such a ball, you're not a big, you have not a lot of surface. But inside, you have a lot of weight. And if you're growing and growing, your top will be quite heavy. So at the bottom, you have to strengthen yourself. And plant cells, when they become old, the cell wall can get more and more stiff. And some pieces, well, with trees, you see that as well. A young plant will not be as woody as an old tree. So plants manage to kill cells and make them very strong components in the outside wall of the entire plant. And that's what cacti actually are doing as well, because all the water and the mass of the cactus is quite hard to carry in such a watery, weak tissue. Well, I have cut cacti before, even rotting cacti, and that's even softer material. But I have also cut cacti to make several cacti of them, just the cuttings. But if you look at the inside of a cactus, it's just water. It's just very soft material, and well, all the cacti harden up to be strong at the bottom. Otherwise, it would collapse, right? So when they are rotting, the color is slightly different. Rotting tissue becomes well, rotting tissue actually releases the nutrients, and when nutrients are released like that, bacteria can feed on that as well. So if bacteria feed on that, other colors will appear because cacti are usually just bombs of nutrients. All the nutrients they can find, they load in the green parts. So they're very nutritious for for other beings. When you have bacteria inside your cactus, they will turn brown, and that is because the bacteria will take the sugars and the nutrients from the cactus and make very complicated molecular stuff from it that will show you color. So a rot or a bacterial infection will turn either a warm brown or blackish. Yeah, so if it is a warm brown instead of gray brown, the gray brown is mostly hardening because the root cells are actually dead cells, and dead cells lose their green pigments. And when there are no longer green pigments, there are also no longer the yellowish tones anymore. So that will become gray brown. So the hardening of a cactus will look gray brown, and the rotting of a cactus will look warm brown or black, and it will be soft. And the soft part is also because the cells are not linked to each other anymore, so the surface will not be stiff.
And
Well,
if someone has like a rotting cactus, what should you do with it? Should you cut it off and
no, actually just cut it off. Well, well, firstly, I will be sad. I am very emotional attached to my plants, so at first sight I will be a bit sad, but after that I'll see it as an experiment. Um, well, when I was repotting, I found some plants that were rotting, some from dry rot, some from, well, root rot, some from a bacterial infection, but I just take the cactus and with a kitchen knife, I just cut into it. Keep in mind that you should clean a knife every time because if you have with every cut that still contains rotting tissue, clean the knife. Because if it is even a slightly bit of bacterial infection, in fungal infections also can be bacterial site sites adapted because when the plant is weakened by a fungal infection, bacteria also can have they have a free game. You know, they they can do whatever they want because the plant defense mechanisms will not be defending that part of the plant anymore. So clean a knife every time you cut. And I would recommend learn from it. Look at the inside of the plant. You see the vascular tissue from the plant. Let's say the veins of the plant. Um, all plants have veins in which they transport their sap flow. One is going up. This contains nutrients and water, and one is going down to the roots or to other leaves. Well, although cacti don't have leaves, they do have two vascular transport ways. But you can see those really well when you're looking inside a cactus. If you have cut it through the middle, like you see a big round part in the middle, which looks like a circle. And when you look closely, you see all kind of tiny circles that form that circle. Well, this is actually the vascular tissue of a cactus. And when you look inside that circle, you see some more spongy tissue. Well, it's very interesting to look at. I must upload such photos at my Instagram, but when I'm doing it, I have my hands full of cacti sap and a knife, and I'm too enthusiastic to make photos. But next time I will do that, I must upload a photo on my Instagram account.
I'm very curious now. I feel like I should cut through one, but I have to find one that's rotting.
Well, but if you are making cuttings of cacti, you also can just look at the inside. They're very, very intriguing. Cacti have those knobs on which their spikes forms, right?
Yeah.
Those are called tubercles, and on the tubercles they have almost a crown in which the spikes are. Those are called the areoles. And if a cactus is flowering, most of the time the bud emerges from one of the tubercles, and that actually is very visible in a cactus because if you cut it through, if you cut off a part which still has tubercles and you cut it perfectly at a tubercle, you see that there's a small vein towards the tubercle. So the hormones and the nutrients are actually going to each small knob which contains the spikes. So if you are making cuttings of your cactus, if you have a cactus with such arms or so, you will notice that the roots actually form on the outside, where the tubercles are. So the vascular tissue is tissue that is not fully grown, to say it like that. The tissue can still go back to stem cell state and form the roots. So it is quite entertaining to cut through cacti when I am making cuttings and look at the inside. So I can predict by looking at the wound I made where the roots are going to form.
And how do you do that? Do you let it callus over, like succulents? You let it callus over for a few days until it's dry, and then you stick it on top of water? Or how do you
With
propagate them?
most succulents, I am very lazy. I am very lazy. I have a lot of cacti. Um, if I just can break off a part and there's no sap coming out, the wound is just very small, I will just put that single part on soil. Take in mind that I do not take organic soil, so I don't take potting soil. I take a bit of potting soil, just a quart of potting soil, um, and half of the mixture will be sand, and another quarter of the mixture will be perlite. So it must not be organic soil because that will be hardened when it's not wet anymore. With propagating succulents, you don't want it to be wet all the time. You just want it to sit there and dry out a little bit, so the cactus is almost like, "Huh, I need water. Let's make roots." I imagine that they're thinking that. I actually hope that they're thinking that. That would be so funny.
That would be a very funny thought if they do that.
Yeah, well, sometimes I actually feel like when um, when cells are drying out in a cutting, then that's the moment that they will seek for water, and it's actually true because the when plant cells are shrinking, the cell walls of the plants will notice that they will not be as swollen as they were before, and that triggers some sort of hormone that will take those vascular parts I just explained, and they degrade the cells towards more stem cell like cells, and that will form roots. So it is actually changing the plant into another environment that will make it that will have it to make roots. So if I have to cut off a part with a knife or with scissors, and there will be a wound, I always dip it in rooting powder. That contains some sort of hormone that will speed up the process of making roots.
Mm-hmm.
Some most rooting powders are just hormones, but back at the lab, we also sometimes use rooting powder that contains an antifungal some kind of. Yeah, well, I have not found out which element it actually is. They will not tell me that. It's very sad. It probably will be very, very illegal to use. But there are also rooting powders available with a component that is antifungal, which is actually perfect because cuttings can die of rot, of course. So, but personally, I do not put succulent cuttings on water. I just put them on soil, and even when I'm very lazy, I just put them in a tiny box and just forget about them until they have roots.
And they have roots, and
Sometimes, yeah, I have a tiny, yeah, it's a container which it contained some kind of cream cheese, and I have cleansed it. And when I was repotting a cactus, a lot of the babies just came off, and because the plant had a lot of babies underneath, and I took out one baby, which actually was the fundamental part on which all other babies relied. They they were laying on top of each other, and that was the only reason they were holding, because they were stacked on each other. And I took away one of them, and the other 30 just plop, they fell down. They were hanging with a tiny string on the mother plant, but I tried to repot it, but it looked so ugly. I took off all of them actually. I just I threw the babies in that container I was talking about, and it has been on my counter for about a month now, and I'm pretty sure about half of them has rooted, and they have not shrunk any bit. They're as big as when I put them in that particular containers. So it's quite crazy.
That's insane. It really proves how resilient these plants are.
Yeah, they're so adaptive. And that's actually one of the reasons I love cacti so much.
They're so
They,
they're I think people say they're very easy, but I also hear a lot of people saying that they kill cacti and succulents, but I think it's just because usually overwatering is what I hear a lot.
yeah, well, as I explained, the roots of cacti cannot, um, their capacity of being surrounded by water is very low. Um, yeah, so overwatering is quite a common mistake people make. And also, well, I am very attached to my plants, so I see every bit of new growth and I get all that enthusiastic about it. But when you miss the signals your plant is giving you, yeah, that's the part where it goes wrong. When I see a plant is making buds, I know I can water it a bit more. If I see that the plant has not grown in 2 months, I will question myself, shall I either water it or let it be dry so it can um, recover it a bit? So yeah, um, it is actually, well, I make mistakes as well. Let's put that first. Sometimes I have plants that I thought, oh yeah, okay, this has been way too much water, and I have ignored all the signals the plant was giving me. But yeah, well, it's just looking at your plant and learning from it. Back in the days when I had a certain species that died, I refused to buy that species ever again. But when you let a cactus die, it's nice to question for yourself, what was the reason? Just not question yourself, also question me, for instance. Why did my plant die? I put it here and here, and now it looks like this or that. Just get to know why your plant has died and try to avoid that with your next plant. Well, I still have this policy. If I let a certain plant die, it is not very likely that I will buy that particular plant again. I have had it with, um, I don't know the English name of it, but it's yeah, it's some kind of low plant. It looks like a moss, but with tons and tons of orange or red berries on top. In Dutch, it's called koraalmosje, which will translate to coral moss. I have.
Coral moss. I'm gonna try to find it now.
But yeah, I have killed that 2 times. My mother, it's one of my mother's favorite plants, so she gave it me twice, and twice it died. So every time when I see those tiny plants at the garden center, I just relive the trauma. I will never buy that again. I will just not ever think of buying that again. But I have the opposite with plants. I feel that were not my fault. I have even Lovophora, which also are one of my favorite cacti. Those are just tiny, um, yeah, just tiny rounds that produce mescaline, which is quite a heavy drug. So, but and I know how to care for them. I have plants that have grown twice in size in 2 years. So yeah, I I am very confident um, in taking care of them. But sometimes, yeah, even one of them died. So yeah, I will continue buying them. But I just encourage people that have cacti that die to find out the reason why the cactus has died. And with the next cactus, prevent that from happening. I think that's very important as well. Plus, you have to know when to water. Rather not giving the plant water than watering it too much. But when the plant is flowering, yeah, you cannot keep it dry because the flower will be gone in before it even has emerged.
And if it looks shriveled. give it water. It needs water.
Yeah, well, it also can be if it looks shriveled, the plant also can be rotten somewhere.
Oh.
But so if you have a cactus that looks shriveled at top, look at the bottom of the plant. Is that still hard, or does it feel like the top, or does it feel like not rotting? Yeah, then you can water it perfectly. I also sometimes have plants of which I think, "Huh, you look so sad. Let's give you water." But wait, why do you look so sad? I watered you 2 weeks ago. Huh, let's investigate. And well, I'm very easy with taking plants out of their pots. The soil I have them in is so loose, there's so much sand in it that it will not be hard to take out the plant at all. Um, Most of my plants I can take out of their soil without any problem and put them back without any problem as well. And sometimes I find out that they're rotten. So, well,
Oh.
but most of the people when they look shriveled, they need water. That's true.
Yeah, I'm having struggles with my spiralis cactus. It's the
Mhm.
very first time I have one, and I didn't realize how much water they actually need in comparison to all my other cacti, because it was
Mhm.
very dehydrated, and I gave it quite a lot of water, and then it pops back up. Like in a week, it was
Yeah.
back. Needs so much water. It's a very different species, I think, which
Yeah.
drinks a
Well,
lot.
what is also a fact actually, the pole cacti, as I like to call them, are very different in water use than those tiny uh, round cacti. Um, the pole cacti can grow up to 15 centimeters a year. So yeah, that needs a lot more water than such a tiny round cacti that will not grow even a centimeter in a decade. So yeah, the tall ones will need more water than the small ones that will stay small forever. So yeah, it is also a bit of you adapting to what you see in the cactus, and just be confident. If it's growing, you're doing a good job. Unless the growth is very light green and looks um, very pointy, then you need to put your cactus in more light.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's also a thing. What I see very often when I enter people's house, they have this cactus at the north side of their house, um, which in the Netherlands is the side which does where the sun doesn't come actually. So if you put cactuses at places where they have very little light, they will try to grow into the light. So there will be a growth boost, but the growth will not look normal. It will form a point, and the point is actually seeking sun. So if you have a cactus that grows tremendously fast, but the new growth is small, is in diameter very small, very much smaller than the mother plant, you also should question: does my plant have enough light?
And
But
that's a good topic. So hear a lot. You have cacti. You need grow lights. Is that true or not?
oh no, not at all. I do own a grow light, but I have not used it yet. I do own a grow light, and that's purely because I was planning to sow cactuses in my basement. And my basement is dark, very, very dark. So I thought, oh, let's use artificial light. But for me, mostly, well, let's go a little back. When I still lived at my parents' place, I had all my cactuses in full sun the entire day. Well, for some, that was a big mistake. I rearranged a lot of them because some of them turned purple or red. Purple or red are actually signs that your plant has too much light. Just like a human skin, they produce pigments to prevent their inner parts from being overloaded. So when your plant turns either red or purple or brown, um, except from some open GI types. Keep them a little out of the sun. And that doesn't mean change it to another room which has no light. It also can mean put it behind another plant or put a tiny piece of plastic in front of your window. Um, and you can also have cacti that fully burn. And yes, I have made that mistake multiple times. I have cacti that when I came home from work at a long day, um, most of the time I asked my parents to shut the window a bit to put my curtains before it or something like that. But at the days they forgot to do that, and I forgot to ask. Sometimes I came back and I found just about 5 cacti that were burned on one side. I
Oh,
even have cacti that have not outgrown their burns yet, because they are the pole cacti type, and they have one side that is fully burned. And at such moments, I could feel so guilty. Oh no, it's my baby, and I am because it has damaged so much. Well, cacti can actually take such amounts of sun, but then they need to be ventilated. Imagine a human body. Well, if it is 35 degrees outside, but it's very windy, yeah, I can stand that perfectly. But if it's 35 degrees outside and there's not one single hint of airflow, well, I will sweat and I will complain about it so much. But yeah, that's also with a cactus. If you have it in your windowsill and there's no airflow, the cactus will heat up, and with radiation from the sun, the surface will dry out, and that's how you can get a cactus to be burned. But to get back to the original topic, the growth lights, I'm not using growth lights at all. I have my cactus at medium sunlight, which means that they have been about half a year for now. In I think they have about 5 hours of sun a day. Well, back at my parents' place, they had about well, from 10 to 9. That's almost 12 hours of sun a day. That is possible, but most cacti will survive with only 6 hours of sun a day. Even some will survive with 4. Well, to explain to you guys how my apartment looks like, I have on the sunny side, so the south is, for me, that's the south. That's where the sun is can be seen the entire day. Um, there are trees, and well, I have a very light apartment, but the trees cover the direct sunlight for the biggest part. I have a tiny windowsill that is on the south side, but the trees cover that direct sunlight over there. So the cacti that are in my tiny windowsill are they have about 2 hours of direct sunlight and about 8 hours of sunlight of just brightness, not sunlight, just brightness, and that's enough for them. I must say, most of the plants that are in the tiny windowsill are cacti that are not the species that need full sun, and euphorbia succulents. But then I have the enormous windowsill. This is a windowsill about 6 meters, well, about 5 meters, and it's about four, I think, half a meter wide. So yeah, it fits a lot of plants. And that windowsill is on the north, on the west. So that receives about well, from 3 o'clock to when the sun goes behind the other apartments, there will be about 8:30. So they receive about 4 to 5 hours of sunlight, and none of my succulents is stretching because of that. So growth lights, no, you don't need them. When you talk about winters in the Netherlands, you absolutely don't need them because when it's winter, you should force your plants to go sleeping. Um, this actually promotes the health of the cactus because it will save all of its energy to give it a growth boost when it's waking up. But it also is a factor of how you can get your cactus to bloom. Keep it dry the entire winter. When it looks very, very, very sad, ask someone who knows about it for help. But when you are sure it's a cactus, not a euphorbia that looks like a cactus, you can keep it dry. I promise you. I have this Christmas cactus. It will, and after it has bloomed in well before December, I think, I will keep it dry. It will look terrible. My friends laugh at me like, "Whoa, you are torturing that poor thing." And the only thing I will say is, watch me. Just watch me. And the year after, it will create. Well, it's quite a tiny Christmas cactus, but it will create about 50 flowers. So
50 flowers.
yeah, it's
My God.
crazy. Well, I have the other variant, the Eastern cactus, at my place back home, and my father was complaining that that it looked so sad, and no, Lisa, you should give the poor thing some water. And I was saying, no, 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 no. I know what I'm doing. Um, so this, well, actually yesterday, I had to work. It was a holiday, but I still had to work. Um, so I had to always when I go to my work, I skip. Well, I go to my parents' place just to talk for a bit, just to chill with them for a little while. And my father told me, "Well, look at your windowsill. Do you see that your Easter cactus has all those weird pink thingies on the leaves? Is that new growth or are that flowers?" And I said, "Well, those are flowers. That's why I tortured the damn thing the entire winter." So when a cactus is not receiving any water, it basically gets the point. The cactus will stop growing instantly. Well, it will look sad and it will shrink down a bit, but it will get the point. And don't make it, well, young plants are not in this treatment. If your plant is very, very tiny and you're very sure it's not a mature plant, I have mature plants that are not even wider than 1 centimeter. I can keep them dry at all. I also have plants that are over 20 centimeter and that are still not juvenile. There are still juvenile plants. So if you are very sure the plant is mature, keep it dry the entire winter. And if you start to enjoying the weather, and if you see some daffodils or so flowering outside, then repot it. Not give it water for 1 or 2 weeks yet, and then water it.
And when do you start letting it dry, not giving it water anymore? Is that around October already or?
It depends. For me, it depends on the weather. Well, when it's bloody hot, well, in the Netherlands we have um, relatively hot late summers since the climate change. So when it is still above 20 degrees, I will not. I will just keep watering. Some
Mhm.
plants, I have a few plants that will flower late summer, and those I stop watering just after they have flowered, about 2 weeks after the flower has died actually. Um, I also have those living stones. Those are not cacti, but they are special succulents for sure. I will stop watering them also after either they have flowered or when the temperature drops below 18 degrees. So I actually watched the temperature.
Okay.
Well, with plants and growth, there is um, not time. Plants do not require just time to grow or to flower. They require temperature and time both.
Hmm.
And in plant sciences, that actually is called degree days, and it's just multiplying degrees and days. So for flowering plants, they can need a certain time of degree days to flower, but also they need that amount of degree days to be cold to fertilize the plants to be able to flower next year. So and if it's underneath, some plants need to be underneath 15 degrees. Well, I just have them all in my apartment. Some plants I shift to the window. I have well, the windows are a lot colder than inside the room. So to keep sure the plants are a little bit colder, I shift them towards the window. But some plants need about 3 months with 15 degrees to reach that fertilization point. Well, let's say that some plants have a threshold of 15 and they need 1500 degree days to be fertilized for flowering. So the plant needs a very long time in a cold temperature. And when the temperature lowers, the plant needs more time to be fertilized. But some plants, yeah, well, I also have plants that actually need to be below 10 degrees to be fertilized. Well, that will never happen. So I'll just enjoy my plant without flowering. But well, I still don't have a greenhouse, unfortunately. So no, but to get again back to the point of growing light, just for well, when you're in an apartment without direct sunlight the entire day, yeah, a fair point. Well, in that case, you can use a grow light. Well, not in winter at all. Um, but only use it when you see stretching.
Hmm.
Um, if you do not see any stretching in your plants, just assume that they're fine. The stretching in succulents other than cacti can be seen by, when the plant elongates much more than when you bought it. So if you have echeveria, those rose-like succulents, they're quite common. Sometimes the stem between the leaves is visible. Well, when you see that, the plant is either flowering, which only occurs in spring, or it is stretching. Well, in most cases, it's stretching.
Mostly.
Mostly, it's stretching. Um, yeah, so if you see that a succulent that is stretched, it will not be reversed. It's not that if I take a stretched succulent and put it back in my super sunny windowsill, that it will de-stretch or something. That's not a thing at all. So what you can do is indeed put it in your sunny windowsill and let it be ugly for a while until the leafy part has become more dense. Then strip the leaves underneath the part that you want to keep and try to let that root or just cut it off, dry it for a few days and put that in the soil. So yeah, succulents are so easy with rooting most of the time that when they are ugly, just you just can cut off parts that you still like and continue with that. So that's quite nice actually.
Definitely gets me curious to try experiment more with this because I don't think I have experimented enough with cutting off things because I'm a bit afraid of doing that and
Yeah,
propagating.
well, because succulents are so adaptive, well, you can very easily cut off parts. And I recommend reading powder when there are bigger wounds. But yeah, they will root quite easily. And always keep the mother plant. Always keep a backup plant. Well, although they can be reproduced very easily, they always can die. Just keep in mind they can die. So always keep the backup plant.
Yeah.
Don't cut off don't cut off the part and throw away the other half. Most cacti will, when you cut off the top, let's in this case we have a pole cactus. You cut off from half of it because you think where it's becoming too long. Just let it set. So the ugly cut off um, bottom part, just let it be. Just water it. Just treat it as a plant. At the parts where the tubercles are, where those veins are, they will create new plants at the edge. The entire same plant, they will actually grow out of the parts you cut it off. So and you can propagate that as well. While some cacti are not just to be pretty, a lot of cacti are damn ugly. Let's get that sure. But yeah, they're nice to play with, I think, as well.
Yeah. Well, they're all beautiful in their own way. So
Well, they are.
after we do the like we have overwintering, and then there are some like Astrophytum, for example, that after winter comes out, they're like super shrunken. How do you take
Mhm.
care of hydration after winter? Do you give it extra water, or do you give it like every few weeks, a bit?
Well, when they come out of winter, when I am starting to enjoy the weather again, for me it's repotting time. And if you have 300 plants, that will take you about a week. And then you will be repotting every damn day. Um, I have some plants that are still in bad soil. And with bad, let's define bad soil. Bad soil is either too much rocks for species that don't need that much rocks, um, or very organic soil. Well, I rather put my plants on pure rocks than in organic soil, to be honest. But if you look at breeders, cactus breeders just sow their baby plants on organic soil because seeds germinate on whatever. They will just germinate on everything. And because organic soil has so much more nutrients in it, cacti will grow on that. They will grow. But after a while, because the soil is dry, the soil dries out that much that it will be just one chunk of soil that will not take up the water nicely. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that is quite a thing. If you have cacti in organic soil, they're just one chunk of soil that will not take up water when you water it. And I have it sometimes um, with cuttings, and then I water it, and the water just runs
Runs exactly through.
it runs through,
Yeah.
and the soil doesn't take up any water. I can get very mad about that sometimes, and I will say things like, "Well, no water for you this time," but well, the first thing I do with that type of soil, I take an old toothbrush and I start taking off that soil till I have just the roots left. And I can tell you, it's a very labor intensive treatment.
And
Um,
scary.
it's scary though, but if you have roots and you hear the roots popping off and you see enough roots left, well, I have to say you have to be a little experienced in plant roots. But if I have a cactus and I'm de-soiling it, I take off a lot of the roots on purpose because well, when you're keeping cactuses dry, they actually let a part of the roots die. And that roots are not good for the cactus at all, because they are very organic and they can rot. They're just dead parts of plants in the soil. So I like to take out the dead roots. I don't care about dead roots that much. But when a cactus is still sleeping, because you're keeping it dry the entire winter, the roots are sleeping as well. So if the soil is completely dry, and you hurt some roots, just a few roots, it doesn't matter, because if you put it back in the new soil, and for new soil, I'll recommend with either small stones in it or perlite in it, for sure sand in it. Um, yeah, so you create a soil that's not organic. It doesn't contain that much fertilizer or so the cactus will grow very slowly. But I will apply fertilizer at most species. So I have entire control over how my cactuses are growing. But I water it after 2 weeks after the repotting. And that is because when I have damaged roots, and I will re-wet it directly after, bacteria, fungi have so much impact and so much chance to infect the roots. That's not what you want. So after repotting, always keep cacti about 1 or 2 weeks dry. Unless you're just taking a cactus with a chunk of soil and put that in another chunk of soil. My rule of thumb is actually, when you are hurting roots in succulents, keep them dry for a little while. So when I start to like the weather, when I can wear t-shirts without sleeves and stuff again, then I start repotting, and about 1 week, or when I'm lazy 2 weeks, that is the point when I'm giving water again. And with repotting, it's very, very, very important never to damage the roots of a flowering plant. The plant will be very, yeah, deregulated because so much is happening. It has to put energy into the flower, but also in maintenance of the roots, and also in repairing roots. And oh wait, but now there is nutrients. Let's also make new roots. But oh wait, I have a flower left. Panic. So the plant will not be very happy if you repot it when it's flowering or having a bud. Having a bud is for a cactus even a more hectic situation than flowering itself, because it's producing and putting so much energy in that one bud, or in that multiple buds, that it cannot have repotting at that certain moment.
There's so many things I can use and apply to my own cactus now. I think keeping them so long is, I've only learned from observing them and keeping them for quite a few years. I think I had my first one when I was 13, my first little grove. But yeah, it's a different approach to knowing more about them.
Well,
I think we have to probably have you on for like a plant biology episode, because you know too much to not tell us.
That's sweet. That's sweet. Well, yeah, it's my entire studies, and it's not only my studies, it's also my hobbies, because I am too much of an enthusiast about this. So
We'll definitely have you on for another cacti episode, probably. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing your expertise. So where can everyone find you, on Instagram or on your website, or?
Well, I started about a year ago. I started a page on Instagram. It's called Groene Groezels. It's Dutch, actually. I give a lot of information about the species in particular, or the activity that I'm posting about. Well, it is in Dutch, but if you hit the subscribe the translate button underneath a post, most of the time it translates to the essence of the post. So I am called groene groeisels, which is translatable to green growings. But yeah, I am posting sometimes daily when I'm very bored, but let's say multiple times a week with a lot of information about cacti. And you can always, when you have plant problems or dying cacti, or if you're questioning what species it is, just send me a text. I will reply anytime because, yeah, I actually enjoy it too much.
So if I have any dying cacti or questions, I will be sending my pictures, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will also be sending their pictures with you.
Yes, well, I'm grateful.
The translate button works really well. That's how I've been getting information from you of plant species. I really like your little tips and knowledge. So
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for being on the very first episode. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Well, no, I am very blessed to be on your podcast. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you for having me. I think it's
No problem.
Thank you again to Lisa for being on the episode. Thank you for providing all of our listeners, you guys, with amazing information. Please go check out Lisa. As I said in the beginning of the episode, you can find all her information, her Instagram handle, which is in Dutch. I'm not going to try to pronounce it and make you guys laugh at me again. You can find that in the description of this episode. Go show her some love. You have cacti questions, send her some pictures and she'll give you some answers. It's lovely. Thank you guys and see you next week. Bye. The stunning music in this episode is written and composed by Leonardo Gil Camargo, and it's called Verde Brasil. You can find more information about his works in the description of this episode.